Welcome back. Let's take a look at today's front pages. The Telegraph reporting Rishi Sunak will splash the cash to help the poorest communities during the energy crisis. It also features an image of the Duchess of Cambridge playing rugby after she was announced as the new patron of English rugby. The Mirror says it's D-Day for Britain as the energy crisis continues to hurt the poorest families. The Times headline says those struggling to pay their bills will be given rebates on their council tax. Pressure on the PM after more Tory MPs call for him to resign. That's according to The Guardian this morning. They also feature a photograph of the Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick after those recent allegations of racism within the service. Here's the Metro, also featuring that picture of the Duchess of Cambridge, and alongside that, their news that 4 Russian aircraft were detected near British airspace ahead of Boris Johnson's vital call with Vladimir Putin.
Just want to bring you up to date with the latest reaction from you guys about Northern Ireland ports not checking agricultural foods, fresh food produce coming into Northern Ireland as part of the Brexit agreement. Just a few mentions of this because there's been so much reaction. Jeff says, talks over protocol have dragged on far too long. Well done, Mr. Poots, for saying enough is enough. Invoke Article 16. Gabby says, I support the halt of the protocol. Get rid of it. Finally, someone has had the guts to do it. Dave says, we totally support scrapping these ridiculous checks within the UK. It's about time Brussels realised we are a sovereign country. More reaction on that throughout the morning. Right now, what is inside the newspapers with Kate Hardcastle, the business commentator, and Michael Portillo, former Chief Secretary to the Treasury and journalist. And funny, Michael, there's little or no mention of this, despite this breaking at tea time last night in the newspapers.
About Mr. Poots?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tucked away. I mean, quite well reported in the Telegraph, but tucked away. I think it is actually an enormous story, and I do wish that British people would pay attention to it.
Because there will be repercussions, not only for Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, but the UK and the European Union as well. We're all tied up in it. Kate, we want to go front page of the Times for you, and this is an interesting one. Beauticians offering Botox, but this is black market Botox. Tell us more.
Well, I mean, it's a break from the norm of what we're dealing with in the regular news here, but an important story all the same. I mean, toxin is toxic and it's poisonous, so this is very serious. We have a lot of people who are focused on social media and wanting to constantly think about the aesthetic and what they see as improving the face. So to hear that we've got still, after when there was a warning in 2013 that there should be more regulation, these black market clinics of practitioners who are not authorised to be treating patients with Botox, significant amounts of it. It's incredibly concerning.
You actually surprised me, because I would have thought, I mean, I would deem this to be a medical procedure. You wouldn't want something to go in and paralyse your face or whatever.
Which it can do.
Which it can do. And so basically you're saying that not only can you have an unlicensed practitioner, you can have an unlicensed product.
This is exactly what the report's saying. So the Times have been to 2 clinics, one in Wakefield, one in Manchester, and they've had consultations. And in both consultations, compared to what the licensed providers would recommend, both of the recommendations for the client were not in kilter. They were far too much product being recommended. And at the same time as well, these were both unlicensed practitioners. So it's incredibly...
Are they cheaper? Because that would be the big attraction.
That's it. It's all about cost. It's about social media advertising and costs. And I think it's a warning that absolutely, we hear Botox and I think it has a certain comedy element to it. You know, we talk about the ageing process and things. This is serious. This is incredibly serious. It's toxic, it's poison, and if used inappropriately, can do great damage. And there's a case study in the Times, in the fuller pages, talking about someone who's scarred for life for this. And I think they got off lightly, to be honest.
OK, front page of the Times, that one.
And also inside, I mean, just to mention that inside the Times, there are harrowing pictures of women with wounded faces, wounds that are have pus and blood, and very, very, very nasty
Say
stuff.
no more. You turn to the Telegraph now, Michael. Lockdown research. So what's it telling us?
Well, there's going to be a battle, isn't there, about what we learned from the pandemic, because some people will say we didn't lock down fast enough, and then other people are saying, and this research is saying this, that lockdown was pretty ineffective. So these researchers include the Johns Hopkins University Hospital in the United States, which is the go-to place for global statistics on the pandemic, and Lund University in Sweden. And what they're asking is, how much of a difference did lockdown make? Now, this is not to say that it was wrong for people to socially distance or wrong for businesses to shut down. What it's saying is that people would have done many of these things on the basis of recommendation and guidance, using their own free will and their common sense. They didn't need the application of law to make it happen. And in a rather striking conclusion, they believe that the difference to the death toll of lockdown as opposed to not lockdown was 0.2% of deaths, which would mean that in this country, of 52,000 people who died in that first phase, 100 lives might have been saved. But on the other hand, because of lockdown, these researchers say, of course, there are many other costs that we know about, mental health costs, economic costs, and so on. They also say that to some extent, telling people to go home and stay home may have increased the numbers of deaths.
Why?
Because, of course, people were in closed spaces next to each other. So if they'd spent more time outside, away from each other, there might have been fewer deaths.
Gotcha. So I'm taking it then, a lot of this is not about finger wagging, it's about learning for the future.
Yes, I mean, of course, people will say that, you know, these people have an agenda and people on the other side may have an agenda. But what we do need is a rather balanced view of what happened during the recent pandemic. I don't think we can just conclude that we didn't lock down fast enough. In other words, that the next time this happens, we need to disturb even more of our civil liberties. Yeah. We need to consider this research, which is saying that applying the law makes not much difference because people have common sense.
I feel you bristling.
Well,
this.
Absolutely, because we've heard every single day about these people who've had these incredibly challenging situations created out of both sides of the pandemic, in terms of those who feel we should have done more in terms of the lockdowns and those who feel that we did too much. But from a very personal perspective, I have 2 6-year-olds, Eamon. It's been a third of their life, and I can't tell you what I'm starting to witness in terms of their behaviours and habits already that have become part of their everyday existence, relevant to the way that they've lived for the last 2 years. And I absolutely want to understand, please, it doesn't, but we're in this situation again that we are much more informed and prepared, and therefore we need to make sure the debate remains clear, medical and focused.
And therefore, this sort of research is important.
Incredibly important, but absolutely, we've got to try and take the politics out of it and keep to the actual clarity so we get it right next time.
Kate, yesterday was the big levelling up day. Michael Gove announcing his policies on that. I mean, an incredibly important initiative. It may actually define the whole Johnson era. It could, if he gets it right. But I look at it and I just think, surely it's too big a task with too little money, really, to make any difference.
Very fair synopsis. I'm so passionate that we get it right for our regions. We live on a postage stamp of an island, over 60 million of us. We need to make sure our regions count, and there are brilliant regions outside of the M25 corridor that need to be put on the map. They need support from the external side of things, because sometimes a lot of local heroes don't see the effect of what's happening elsewhere, and I think that's where you do need outside influence and investment. But at the same time, there are capable, brilliant people in these regions that need to be consulted, talked to and spoken with. I haven't got through all 330 pages yet. I started working through the summary last night. I do feel there's a lot reiterated that we've heard before. My concern is there's not enough in terms of action right now. With every business plan, you need the short term, the medium and the longer term. And we need to make sure that we don't lose generations of people, because we're waiting for something in 2030 that might start to happen. Yeah. And you and I talk about high streets a lot, but they are the zones for the community. We've had 10 high street ministers in 10 years. We haven't got a plan yet. Yeah. And what we've seen over the last 2 years is more e-commerce, and we've seen retailers, hospitality really struggle. What's the plan for that right here, right now?
You see, I was thinking of that as I was talking to you there, because the more we order online, and that's what people want to do, it seems to be what they want to do, the more you decimate high streets and communities, and the more you take away the heart and the soul and the fabric, and the more you make places look run down because the shops are boarded up, or it's only nail bars, or it's only funeral parlours, or it's only estate agents or whatever who are there in those high streets. I mean, it's pitiable, actually.
Look, retail's not a charity. We don't need to support them because, you know, those bricks and mortar stores need handouts.
But of course, community too.
But this is it. We have an isolation crisis. We have a loneliness epidemic. And that's going to have been exacerbated with the pandemic. So how do we get community places to be, human high streets, reformed? We need some work there.
We all need to ask ourselves, because I'd ask myself, you know, I miss Woolworths and I miss HMV and whatever, and then I go, The thing that puts me off going shopping in high streets and things is parking. All the time, parking. I mean,
I don't have a car. So, no, I do not have a car. So I use public transport. So I'm not put off by that. Yeah. But the fact is we are all guilty. You see, I find it very, very convenient to buy online. May I just make a comment about levelling up? A lot of the papers are saying no new money. I don't think that should be overly the focus. I mean, what makes us believe that government money is spent effectively? Every day we have examples of how government money is wasted. So there's obviously lots of money being spent by the government, taxpayers' money at the moment. And I think this is about how we can spend it better and whether we can spend it with a view to concentrating on these areas which have done so poorly. Mm-hmm. So there's a bit of it which is about infrastructure, about transport links and so on, a bit of it that is about education, a bit of it which is about derelict sites and bringing them up, raising people's morale. But as I said on this programme an hour ago, I think fundamentally it's mainly about education. And I'm not sure that educational outcomes are strongly affected by money. They're affected by getting the right sort of people into teaching. Because I dare say you're here today and I'm here today because a teacher inspired us.
Yeah, and then, no, I was told I had an accent that would never see me outside of Yorkshire. Actually,
is that right?
Well, so, I think we've got to actually be realistic that as well as the education, it's people to mentor and guide and support, and that is the outside influence.
But what I would say about the education thing is, Northern Ireland is a very highly educated region. They educate people to a high standard, but they educate them for export. And I don't know what it's like, so London is seen as the Holy Grail. They're not the jobs. People are educated, they've got exams, but there's no work for them. That's basically historically been the problem.
And you see that can be partly government. Government can move some jobs to, let's talk about the north for the moment. But it's also about private. For example, Channel 4 has moved itself to Leeds. That could be quite significant.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's quite significant, except everybody who works there seems to be from London. And they just spend the time on the train going up and down.
Not in my experience. I do.
You don't live in Leeds.
No, I certainly don't.
Excuse me.
I live on trains, as you know.
Exactly.
No, we've got to get balanced.
That's the one thing I have though with these relocation things, the BBC and whatever. There's no point relocating if you're shipping everybody up from London to do it